Imagine this. You're having a conversation with your partner about something that upset you, something simple, like why they didn't call you last night. And they answer, well, I was busy, I forgot. And so you say, busy? It takes like 2 seconds to send a text. And they say, why are you being so controlling? And it's on. It gets more and more heated and more stuff gets thrown into the conversation, and suddenly you're not even talking about last night anymore. You're talking about that Christmas office party or how they forgot your birthday 3 years ago, and it just keeps going back and forth. And when they're talking, you're not really listening. You're thinking about what you're going to say when they're done. And then you say things like, I hear you and I see what you mean, not because we actually do, but to silence so that we can keep going. And when we're done, nothing's really changed, but both of us have 3 new opinions as to why we were right all along. We've all done it. I can see it in your face that you've done it too. Don't even tell me anything else. As a communications consultant, I hear this scenario all the time. In relationships, in the office, or in conversations about politics. And everyone says the same. They don't understand. And then they ask me, but what can I do to get them to listen? And we're living in a time where we are communicating more than ever, we're more connected than ever, yet we're growing further apart. And it's not because we don't want relationships, but it's because of how our brains work and how it interacts with our changing society. So I'm going to tell you exactly how to do it and how to get people to listen to you and to understand you. But first, we need to look a little bit more on this example, this scenario, to understand why it happens, because it's very revealing. You see, we like to think of ourselves as, very rational and logical and conscious beings, but that's not entirely true. Our brain has to do so many things all at once. It can't really do it all consciously. So we have created a lot of automatic responses and shortcuts that make you act and think faster. And these are great, but they're not perfect. And they have a tendency to make a lot of mistakes, especially when it comes to perception, judgment, and understanding. So if you look at this scenario, the main issue, of course, is that we're not listening. But it's not because we can't listen, it's because we don't want to. Because deep down, we know that the second we start to listen, we also start to risk being wrong. And that's a risk we simply cannot take. Not because we care so much about the topic, but because we have a subconscious tendency to connect the topic to ourselves. So when someone says, you're wrong, you don't hear, you're wrong in this case, we hear, I'm wrong as a person. And this is why people can defend seemingly meaningless opinions as if their lives depends on it. It's not the topic they're defending, it's themselves, their self-worth and their value and who they are as a person. And for most people, even really confident ones, that sense of self is a little bit shaky. So when someone threatens that, we need to defend it. It's a very uncomfortable state to be in for us because our brain essentially doesn't really want to grow and it doesn't want to change because growth and change is very dangerous, so we want to stay the same. And the best way to stay the same and stay safe is to block anything that can influence us. So we reject new information, we choose not to listen, and we hang on to our original standpoint. And what happens next is fascinating and kind of funny actually, because since we obviously didn't listen, we also have no idea what they mean. But we think we do. Oh, we know that we do, especially if it's our partner, we know what they mean. But research shows we actually don't. In fact, we're even better at interpreting strangers than we are our own partner. So because we don't know, and our brain absolutely hates uncertainty, it needs an answer. And if we don't have an answer, it's just going to create one. And of course, it's not going to create just any answer. It's going to create an answer that fits your story, one that allows you to keep believing you're right. And the more you think of it, the more sure you're going to become, because memory isn't fixed, it's flexible. It's not like a picture that's taken once and done. It's actually recreated every time you think of it. And your kind brain wants to support you. So it's going to recreate and alter the memory based on what you currently feel. So eventually, it doesn't even matter how far off we are, because your brain is going to recreate the entire scenario, even the memory of it, all without your knowledge, so that you can keep believing you're right. And this story, the narrative that you're creating, is often the same. They're wrong, they don't understand, and this isn't working. Now, it's not like we've suddenly changed. We've always been like this, but suddenly it's becoming a problem. Suddenly, more and more people, especially the young, are struggling with relationships and basic interactions, and we're seeing a rising loneliness epidemic. So what changed? Put very simply, the world did. You know, before we were trained in a mindset of you have to fix what is broken. So because working on things and working through things was the only option, we naturally practiced the skill sets we needed for relationships, such as patience, resilience, acceptance, and the ability to withstand discomfort. We're not trained for that anymore. We're trained to be fast-paced consumerists with a don't fix what is broken, buy something new mindset. So we do. We switch, we change, and we move on in what we think is the search for the perfect partner, but it's usually just a search for validation without resistance. And every time we change, we avoid the discomfort, yes, but we also never learn how to handle it. So what if the problem isn't that relationships are becoming harder or dating is becoming harder, but that we're slowly becoming less capable of handling it? And what will happen when our society makes that avoidance easier than ever? When the search for the perfect partner doesn't even have to involve a search anymore, or, in fact, another human. Because there is someone that will instantly give you endless validation, always support you, always be on your side. And we've talked about it many times today, AI. And we're already seeing this, right? More and more people are starting to create relationships with AI. And initially, this might not seem like a problem. You know, why not? And just because we want relationships with AI, it doesn't mean we'll stop wanting relationships with each other. But eventually, we might not have a choice. Because knowing what we know about the brain, knowing how we want to avoid discomfort, and how we usually choose the path of least resistance, what will it choose when one option is easy and comfortable and the other is scary and difficult? If we always choose what's easy, eventually we lose the ability to choose anything else. And we've seen this happen many times in history. This is not something new. Every new innovation creates a loss of certain skills. And we've seen this very recently in relationships with the entrance of dating apps. And there's nothing new, nothing wrong with dating apps, but they did change how we meet. And now, you know, walking up to someone in the wild and just introducing yourself and starting talking with them is something very few people feel capable of. And for the vast majority, that is terrifying. And that's fine, because we can function without the skills needed to walk up to someone. But what happens if we lose the skills required for human connection itself? Connection, communication, is a skill. And if you don't practice the skill, you lose it. When I talk like this, it sounds like I'm against technology, or that I think we should stagnate innovation, and that's not the case at all. And I don't even think that AI is a problem or the problem. The problem, however, might be how we choose to interact with it compared to with each other. So we need to protect our skill sets and practice our ability to connect with each other, even when we have an easier option. So as a communications consultant, I said that the question that I get all the time is like, how can I get them to understand and how can I get them to listen to me? And the secret is that it's not so much about focusing on getting attention, it's actually all about giving attention. So I'm going to give you 3 tips to do it, 3 ways that you can get people to listen to you, to understand you, and to create that connection that you want. So the first, which might be the most difficult one, is to accept that you might be wrong. Like the French philosopher Descartes said, doubt everything that can be doubted until you find what cannot. Like, even if you believe you're right, just ask yourself, what if? Like, what if I misunderstood? What if I got the wrong information? What if my interpretation of that information is wrong? Like, is that really impossible? And remember that it has nothing to do with you. Opinions are just something we have, it's not something we are. But we have a tendency, another one of these lovely shortcuts that our brain does, is that we want to stay consistent with what we've said and done in the past. It's easier for us if we don't change so much. So that is why when we have a belief or an opinion, we really want to stick to it because it's more comfortable and easier for our brain and it preserves energy. Second is to ask instead of guess. Another thing we like to do is to, in an attempt to simplify the world, we have a tendency to jump to conclusions. I know you do it too. We jump to conclusions. We think, okay, if you believe A, then you probably also believe B because other people do, or I've seen this before. But that's not necessarily the case. And as we've also seen, we have a tendency to make quite a lot of mistakes when we try to interpret each other. So instead of telling someone what they think or guessing what they think, we can ask. And instead of saying, you're wrong, we can ask, how come you believe that? Instead of saying, that would never work, we can say, why do you think that would work? And we act as if being curious is like giving something up, like we're admitting that we're wrong, but it's not. To understand is never the same as to agree. And lastly, if they don't listen, start listening. I oftentimes have clients and they say something like, yeah, well, I do all of these things, but the problem is that they won't listen to me. And if you say this, I hate to break it to you, but odds are that sentence can be reversed back to you. Because people that are truly listened to, they usually listen. But saying they don't listen, it's usually a defense. It's a very protective and comfortable sentence to use because it removes us from all accountability by making them the problem. But if you say it, odds are none of you are listening and you've created a conversational environment where fear and pride are running the show. So instead, ask curious questions without judgment or without hidden motives of trying to get them or trying to be right, just because you want to understand. And if you do, when you ask these questions, you will see that they will start to warm up. And then you can say, hey, can I share my perspective now? And they will listen. Not because they have to, but because they want to. Because even though our brain's first initial reaction is to protect us, it's only a first and automatic response, not the only response we're capable of. We want connection, but we need to help each other there. Thank you.